Hello AOS fans, it's me, Pete. I'm running through one of my decks which I might be taking to the Grand Clash. This is my Sepulchral Guard deck and it's going to feature in a battle report on this Friday. It's going to be a bit odd because I'm doing both of the decks here. This one's a Sepulchral Guard and the other one's going to be for Skaven. And I might be taking either of them, so we'll see how we get on. But this is my new and improved all-offensive Sepulchral Guard deck. I've dropped a lot of objectives because I really do think these days in a competitive best-of-3 match, objective-based decks really do suffer, especially Sepulchral Guard. They just don't have the speed to be able to change things around when things start to go bad. So there we go. So, on with the deck, and here we will start with objectives. So my first objective is Battle Without End. It should be a fairly easy one to achieve. All I've got to do is bring back 2 or more friendly fighters. I've got a ploy which will help me with that, and that should be a nice easy one whenever that appears. Next one is March of the Dead. Again, a fairly easy one. I've got to move at least 5 of my guys, or all of them, however many are alive, at least 5. It's easy enough to do, but it can be a bit restrictive later on, but it is 2 glory, and that's why I'm keeping it in there. Next one is More Able Bodies. Basically, I've got to take out 2 or more enemy fighters in the preceding action phase. That one I think is a fairly easy one to do, considering I'm becoming much more offensive with this deck. I'm going to become more stabby. And the next one to go along with that is Skills Unforgotten. Score immediately, so it's an immediately scorecard, which is always good. If my leader takes out an enemy fighter, so it doesn't have to be the enemy leader, just an enemy fighter. It can be a Targor or an Arnulf, or it can be another Petitioner if I'm up against Sepulchral Guard, or any of the Skaven. Should be a fairly easy one for me to score. And the next one is Crushing Force. Score this immediately if a friendly fighter makes a successful attack that deals at least twice as much damage as is needed to take the opponent out. So what I would plan to do here is I'd either look for a Targor or an Arnulf, as I said before, and hype up my Warden or my Champion with some plus damages, or I'd probably look to take one of the bigger guys down a few pegs with one of my other fighters and then move in with the Champion or the Sepulchral Warden, and then take them down with a over-the-top hit. I did wonder about No Remorse, but the problem with No Remorse is you have to have a damage characteristic higher than their wound characteristic, so it doesn't matter how many wounds they've already taken, so that one's less easy. In some ways it's easier, but I think it's more achievable to do Crushing Force all the time, and No Remorse is a bit more specific, but we'll find out, we'll see how that goes. My next one is Determined Defender. That's a pretty easy one for Sepulchral Guard. It is objective based, but I can take one of my Petitioners, dump them on an objective in my backfield and just forget about them, and that should give me an easy glory. Next one is Divide and Conquer. I'm going to be going after them, they're going to be going after me. That should be hopefully fairly easy for me to pick up as well. Next one is Ploy Master. Scoring an end phase if I play 3 or more ploys. Well, there's should be a fairly achievable thing to do. Even if I have to burn a few ploys that I wouldn't have wanted to use, I can do that if I really get desperate. The next one is Supremacy. Now, whilst I said I'm not going after objectives, and that is 3 objectives, if I get it early on, or if I've got 3 objectives in my half, that's going to be a no-brainer for me to try and go for, especially with all of my extra bodies running around. I should be able to do that. Next one's Escalation. Now this one I think is one of my new favourite cards as well. You've got to play 3 or more upgrade cards in the preceding action phase. Now that should be fairly achievable, and it's 2 glory, so that's a no-brainer for me. Next one is Master of War. This one I quite like because again your opponent can't really stop you directly from scoring any of these ones, along with Escalation and Ploy Master. This one you just have to score an objective, a ploy and an upgrade. Should be fairly doable. And the last one is Victorious Duel, which is score immediately if my leader takes an enemy leader out of action. It's a bit more restrictive because it's got to be the enemy leader, but again I hope I can push someone down on their wounds by using some of my other guys first, and then running in with my Sepulchral Warden to claim all the glory on that one. I had considered a few of the other damaging ones, but I think this one's going to be the most easy to achieve. So those are my objectives. Moving on to my ploys. So the first ploy I've got is a Bone Shrapnel. I think this is a must. I'm going to have guys die, that is a given, and this will enable me to cause a wound on the opponent without having to roll any dice, so that's a plus straight away. The next one is Restless Dead, so that helps me bring someone back. Again, that's a must for Sepulchral Guard. I think I want to be mixing it up in combat, I want to be getting in the thick of it, so that one is just going to have to be there. I then got Terrifying Screams, push an enemy fighter 1 hex. That would be great if somebody's grabbing and hugging objectives, especially those pesky dwarves, and it'll help me just control my opponent a bit more. Next one is Necromancer Commands. Play this one after failed attack, make the attack again. That will come in handy when I'm trying to score my Sepulchral Warden's skills Unforgotten, or maybe the Victorious Duel, because frankly he always manages to choke at the last second with those. I am considering swapping that one out for Ready for Action, because that is an absolutely doozy of a card, and it would enable me to enable someone to attack twice rather than just attack if I miss. So I'm not sure which one I want to do on that so far. I'll have to see how the game goes. Next one's Confusion. Always a winner. Help get my Sepulchral Warden out of the way if he's in a bit of danger, or shift my opponent's guys around if they're lining themselves up. It'll really screw someone over if they move into position, hopefully to swing around a few turns, and then I can shift them back out of the way again, or maybe move them into a position where I get some more assists. Next one is Duel of Wits. This is a given. My opponent is going to be playing ploys at some point, so when I can get that, I can fill my hand up with more cards. It means I can hopefully get more combinations off in one go where needed. Healing Potion. That's a given for the Warden. I do not want him to die, and this is solely for him. Next one is Ready for Action. This one is a beast of a card, I think. Once you play an upgrade on a fighter, they can make a move or an attack action straight away. It means you can charge with your Warden, you can play an upgrade on them straight after, and you can attack with them again. It means my Warden should hopefully be able to get off the skills Unforgotten, maybe get off the Victorious Duel as well. That would be a lot of glory all in one go. Next one is Sidestep. That's a given for me. A bit of maneuverability might help when I've got somebody a bit further away than I need, or maybe, you know, get somebody away from the action if I really need to. Next one is Spoils of Battle. This one's a free upgrade. I think again it's a no-brainer. I do have a 22 card deck. This one means that I pretty much get a free upgrade. And the last one is Time Trap. I said I was going offensive, and I really mean it. Time Trap I'm going to be using again to do a double attack at some point, maybe along with Ready for Action as well, although not obviously at the same time, but if I can get a couple of those double hits off, especially early on, I might be able to take out some of my opponent's heavier guys, and that will really cause some problems because I'll just have the weight of numbers then that they're not going to be able to deal with. So you've seen the glory and you've seen the ploys I'm going to be using to try and score them, and here are the upgrades I'm going to be buying with all that glorious glory that I'm going to get. First one is Ancient Commander. Move 3 guys instead of 2. I'm going to have that one because it will be useful with March of the Dead, and for no other reason, just the maneuverability will be so much better on my force if I've got that. Deathly Charge is the next one. +1 damage to my champion if he makes a charge action. He's damage 2 normally. This will make him damage 3. That's just going to be a very useful thing to have, especially once he's inspired. He'll be rolling 3 hammers and he has cleave, so he will be a mincing machine. Focused Attack. This means my harvester gets a new attack, 2 hammers and 2 damage. Exclamation marks means he has cleave. Rolling 2 dice gives you not bad odds of rolling an exclamation mark, and I will use this card mostly if I'm fighting orcs or dwarves or stormcast, and maybe Skaven, depending on what the Skaven opponent plays, because Kirk needs shields as well. That could give me 2 different people with cleave running around, which will be very handy. Next one is Frightening Speed, a +2 move to the harvester, champion or prince. Depending on where I set them up to start with, that could come in really handy if I need to get someone across the board. Undying, +1 wound, never hurt anybody, quite literally the opposite. That would almost definitely be going on my Warden, or maybe my champion, depending if he's got also Deathly Charge and perhaps Frightening Speed. It'll make him pretty useful. Next one I've got is Acrobatic, which is a bit of an odd one when you consider for undead, but it means if the fighter has a defense characteristic or has a shield defense characteristic and is on guard, they roll an extra defense dice. So that means all my guys, as they roll dodges anyway, are going to suddenly be rolling, well, whoever I give it to will be rolling 2 dice rather than 1. Next one is Great Strength. +1 damage to all attacks, always useful, especially if I can put it even on either the Warden or the champion. Well, no, never, maybe no, maybe the prince or the harvester if I've given him the other attack. +1 damage is always good, plus combining that with Ready for Action and maybe Time Trap means I could get a lot of much higher strength attacks off if they all come out as I want them. Next card is Ethereal Shield. This one gives me basically the ability to turn my dodge characteristic into a shield characteristic. It negates some of the weakness of the force. It would almost definitely go on my Sepulchral Warden, but because I can play on anybody, unlike Remembered Shield, which is the Sepulchral Guard only version, which can only be played on the Warden or I think the champion, this one can be played on anybody, so depending on who's causing the most grief at the time, I can boost them up. Next one is Hero Slayer. Now this one could be a beauty of a card or terrible. You go 1 dice, so you got a 50-50 chance hitting, a 1 in 6 chance of getting a crit, but he does 4 damage. I could give that to anybody and it will make them dangerous. It almost definitely would be a petitioner. But I'm not sold on the one single dice attack. There's a possibility I might swap this out for demonic weapon, which does damage, but I can resurrect people, so the damage isn't so much of a factor for me. But I'll have to see. Hero Slayer is a tasty looking option. And the last one is Shade Glass Axe. Unlike the Shade Glass Boomerang, this one will not come back if I throw it, so it is a one attack deal at range, but it does give me some range on my guys if I need it, and it rolls 2 hammers and does 2 damage. Now I'm not sure the odds on this, whether it's better to have the axe or the darts. I'll have to play it and see, but the Shade Glass Axe does also give me a closer range attack with 2 hammers and 2 damage, plus 1 damage again on crits. Either way, if you make a successful attack with it, you have to get rid of it. If you do the thrown attack, you have to get rid of it regardless of whether it's successful or not. But then I've got Necromancer commands, so I could possibly use it to redo it there. In fact, that's an interesting question. Can you use Necromancer commands to attack with the Shade Glass Axe again? Interesting one. So anyway, those are my cards. As you can see, I'm going for in your face now. I think Sepulchral Guard can do in your face quite well. They've got the bodies to, and they've got the resurrection abilities to just shrug off the damage that an opponent does, as long as they're giving it back at a similar sort of rate. You're just looking to outlast your opponent, grind them down, and try and pick up a few objectives along the way, as well as knock people off. So we'll see how that does, and we shall see how it gets on against the tricky Skaven, and I may be taking this to the Grand Clash. I'm not 100% sure yet. Only time will tell. It depends on how much I enjoy playing the Skaven over the coming days. Anyway, if you spot anything you think is nonsense, or if you think I've misread any cards, or if I'm just talking out of my back end, then do let me know. Alternatively, if you think this list is brilliant, do let me know that as well, because I always like hearing about how great I am.